All right, we're back, and we're going to talk about creating ads in Overcast. So a few things about Overcast. It is probably the most popular secondary market podcast player. To explain a little bit what I mean by that, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts are primary market players. They're the big boys, so to speak, big boys and girls. And there are a smattering of other podcast players. Just real quickly, I'll open up the Apple App Store. You can get your apps from wherever you want. But if I search podcast player, you can see I get quite a number of podcast players. And if I sort by iPhone and iPad apps specifically, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot. So people decide to use these for personal preferences. They like the design better for whatever reason. But a good amount of your growth can come from these various podcast players. So as it happens, you cannot run an ad on Apple Podcasts within the player, and you can't run an ad on Spotify for podcasts yet, although they do have an advertising platform. We might talk about that later, but in this video we're going to talk about Overcast, which you can see here is the third result for Podcast Player when I search it in the Apple App Store. Now, something to know about Overcast, it is exclusively an iOS app, okay? So it only runs on Apple. Let me minimize this and come back to our website. This is the Overcast website. It's located at overcast.fm. And you can see here you can download it in the App Store, which is the only place you can get it. Now, if I click on ads, it's going to show me some pricing for ads. This is how Overcast works. They're going to run a display ad like this one below the player controls. Here's an ad. Up at the top, here's an ad. This is what they look like within the application itself on someone's phone. These are display ads within players. They're going to run an ad that looks like this for 30 days, and then it's over. And the price of the ad depends on the category. Now, if you select all, it simply means that you can appear in any category. And it also probably means that you show up on the front page, which you can't do with these others. The arts category, $320. Business, $1,300. Comedy, $525. Education, $625. The cheapest one on here, I believe, is fiction at $150. Why are there different prices per the category? Well, that's easy. Supply and demand. There is a greater demand for people to advertise in the business category than there are for them to advertise in the fiction category. I might point out the fact that people with businesses understand the value of advertising, where people with fiction podcasts generally don't understand the value of paid marketing. So it doesn't surprise me that fiction is the lowest entry point here as far as cost is concerned. You'll notice that there are no subcategories here. For example, my philosophy podcast is under philosophy, which is under society and culture, but I cannot advertise in a subcategory. I can only advertise in society and culture, which is the parent category for philosophy. That's actually quite expensive. I've never run an ad for my philosophy podcast here as a result of this, but I've run a few for my fiction podcast, which I'll show you in a minute. So on the first column, we have the category. Remember, parent level category. Then we have the price for a 30-day display advertisement to run inside of the app. And then we have the total number of slots available. One of the reasons that Overcast works so well is that they limit the number of advertisers that can appear in any one category at any one time. And that's so that you are not, competing for exposure while your ad's running. So I think the most that any category can have is 3, as we have all 3 available in TV and film here, for example. And that's it. So if it's sold out, it'll tell you it's sold out. If there's a number, it'll tell you how many slots are available. And if it is available, then the link, the price will become clickable, and you can click on that price to continue with the advertisement purchase, the ad buy. Taps, CPT, this is cost per tap. So this is how many taps you'll get during the 30-day period, estimated, and how much you're paying per tap. The next one is subscriptions, the number of subscriptions you're likely to get in that 30-day period, and the cost per acquisition, or cost per subscription, the cost it is to acquire a new subscriber. As you can see, these CPAs are quite expensive. Who in the world wants to spend $28.89 to gain one subscriber in business? Well, if you have a product that's worth $1,000, spending $28 to get a new lead is not exactly a bad idea. Remember, business podcasts tend to look at listeners as leads and not as 1/1000th of an ad CPM, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. Now I'm going to make some comments here. These numbers here in the subscriptions column are pretty much a CYA price, a cover your ass price, if you're not familiar with the acronym. This is what they're promising you at the absolute most, which of course has to be a little aggressive because they don't want you to come to them and hold them accountable if it underperforms this, right? These are estimated performances. Let's look and find the asterisk and see what it says. The estimated performance metrics above are updated daily from current ad performance, but do not guarantee the performance of your purchased ads. Ad viewership varies over time, and response rates depend on the quality, content, and relevance of your ad. Nothing is more important than this last line right here. Response rate depends on quality, content, and relevance of your ad. So as far as quality is concerned, we've talked about having good mic technique. We've talked about having good quality sound. We've also talked about the importance of planning our content and making sure that we set expectations clearly so people know what they're clicking on before they click on it. And the relevance is, well, we want to make sure that we stick this ad in the right category. Because if somebody sees an ad for a comedy show while they're listening to a true crime show, perhaps they're interested in both genres, but there's no guarantee that they are, and there's significantly less of a guarantee than if you place the ad within the comedy category. These things are important to keep in mind. You cannot just turn on your laptop, hit record with your fucking webcam microphone, and use Zoom to interview your guests, have shitty audio, and expect that any ad you run anywhere is going to perform well, because somebody's going to listen to it, and they're going to think it sucks, and then they're not going to stick around. You can see that these break down like this: 203,000 views, 2,584 taps, and subscriptions based on those taps. So 4.5% of the 1.3% of 203,000 people who saw the ad. This is pretty standard. I see about 1 to 1.5% in taps. Usually it's around 1%, 1.1%. This is very common. This is a very common result I see right here. 1.1% of the total views. And then the subscriptions can vary. I usually see in my ad copy about somewhere between 10 and 15% conversion from the people who actually tap, from person who taps and listens to person who subscribes on the app. Now, to give you some illustrative examples here, I'm going to log into my account, take a sip of water, and then I'm going to come up here and go to account again now that I'm logged in, and I'm going to go to purchased ads. And you're going to see that I have 2 purchased ads here that have recently expired. One was run for 30 days and expired on the 23rd of, that looks like July, and the other expired on the 15th of September, which was just a couple days ago. Now, both of these were for the same podcast. You can see that the copy for each ad is a little different. This one says, mythology and folklore are full of stories you already know well, but it is, and then it's truncated. And this one is the Dictionary of Mythology and Folklore, new entries daily, 5-minute episodes. I was experimenting with which one of these might perform better. You can see I spent $310 to run this ad in the arts category, and I spent $150 to run the same ad practically in the fiction category. Fiction was a more affordable category. Let's look at the results. I'm going to pull up a couple screens here. We're going to do a little math while we're looking at this. Okay, so I spent $150. I got 53,000 views, 558 taps, again, we're about 1.1%, and subs from those taps about 14%. Now, let's look at the ad here. It's a pretty interesting piece of cover art. There's a sweet little sea monster on there. It's easy to see the sea monster, and it's easy to read mythology and folklore. It's very clear that this is a podcast about mythology and folklore, and it's got a cool-ass sea serpent on it. So that's pretty good visual. The Dictionary of Mythology, well, we know that's truncated, but I think that given this and this, we know what this means. It's okay that it's truncated, and the copy says new entries daily, which probably should say new episodes daily, 5-minute episodes. Everybody knows when they click on this ad what they're going to get is mythology and folklore, and they're going to get 5-minute episodes. So I got 1.1% of my total views, 558 people tapped on it, and 78 people subscribed to it. So what did I pay for these 78 subscribers? Well, I spent $150, and I got 78 subscribers. I spent $1.92 per subscriber. That's actually pretty good. I think anything under $2 per new subscriber on any platform is good performance. Anything over $2 but under $3 is, kind of moderately okay performance, and anything over $3 for me is mediocre. Let's see what I did in the arts category. Same artwork, pretty much the same copy. Let's go ahead and clear our calculator. And we'll take 162, or rather we'll take 310, which is the money we spent. And we'll divide it by the number of subscribers we got, which is 162. And we'll see that there as well, I spent just a little bit less, not much at all, fractionally, $1.91 per new subscriber. These ads perform very well. Now, your question might be, Tanner, how in the hell can I justify spending $1.91 for a new subscriber? That's a good question. I can't remember if in previous weeks we've talked about CPMs, but if we go to AdvertiseCast, I'm going to go ahead and pull up their ad calculator, hopefully. So I'm a podcaster. I'm looking to have ads in my podcast, and I want to figure out how much money I can make. I'm going to try our calculator, and I'm going to say I have 1,000 downloads per episode, and I air episodes one time per year to simulate just having one episode, because that's really what I want to figure out here. I'm going to insert two 30-second ads and one 60-second ad. And 30-second ads are going to pay me $18, and 60-second ads are going to pay me $25. And we're going to see over here that if every single one of my episodes features two 30-second ads and one 60-second ad, that I will make $25 per episode. That's not a lot. Amounts have AdvertiseCast 30% revenue share factored in, which means AdvertiseCast gets to take some money. In this case, you don't have to use AdvertiseCast. But you have just spent, if it's costing you $1.91, let's just round down and call it $1.90, in order to gain a single subscriber, well then, to get 1,000 subscribers, you have just spent $1,900. Is that worth it? Well, if we're monetizing through ads, that doesn't seem very worth it, does it? Because, once those listeners are there, let's say you acquire all those in a month, or you drop $1,900, you get 1,900 listeners, and now your podcast is worth, we'll call it 2,000 downloads per episode instead of what it was. And now your podcast is making $50 per episode if it's got two 30-second ads and a 60-second ad included in it. Okay? Well, how much is $50 over the course of a year? Well, that's pretty easy, right? It's 50 times 12. $600. You're making $600 a year for a $1,900 a year investment, or for a $1,900 one-time investment. This doesn't become a profitable investment until somewhere in the middle of year 3. So this isn't very practical as a way of growing your show if you don't have something that can make that cost per acquisition worth it. Now, we're going to talk about that in a separate episode, but I wanted to give you a taste. I know that you're probably thinking, there's no way I'm going to spend $2 a listener because I'll never make that money back. I'll go broke. I want you to keep that fear in your mind as we go through the rest of this Overcast video, and I want you to watch the video in this module, not this module, but in this week that is going to talk about how you justify this cost, ways of justifying this cost, okay? But for right now, we'll close the calculator. We'll make this full screen again, and we'll get back to Overcast. So never mind about how you're going to justify this. Just take in the information about using Overcast. So if I want to go ahead and run an ad, I can go back to Account. You have to have an account, of course. Create one. It's free. And then I'm going to go to Purchase or Buy a New Ad. I'm going to select my category. I'll say it's fiction again. And it's going to ask me to choose a podcast. What podcast are you advertising exactly? Must be in Apple Podcasts. The reason for that is that Overcast pulls all of its podcasts from the Apple Podcast directory. It kind of relists them, let's say. So I'm going to search for a podcast on fiction. I guess I'll search for my podcast, the Dictionary of Mythology and Folklore. There it is. And I get an opportunity to change the copy here. So I'll say mythology and folklore stories, mythology and folklore information daily, factoids daily in 5 minutes or less. Every weekday, done in 5 minutes or less. Now I'll update that preview. Looks pretty good as an ad, real quick to read. Misspelled the word every. We'll fix that and update the preview again. There we go. Mythology and folklore factoids every weekday, done in 5 minutes or less. Or we'll say episodes are 5 minutes or less. There we go. That fits real nice. Fits in there perfect. Okay, cool. So now I'll hit purchase. It's going to take me to a Stripe checkout page. I'm going to pay for that purchase, and within a day or two, that ad will start running. And I'm not going to buy that ad right now because I'm not actually trying to promote that podcast at the moment. But that ad could run. It'll run for 30 days. And as it runs, you'll see purchased ads, and you'll see ads which are active. These are expired, and you can keep an eye on this as it grows. Now, part of running the ad the first time will be that you'll learn how to make a better ad. Your first ad will not perform as well as your second, third, or fourth, or fifth because you'll start to figure things out about the right wording and the right everything else. But remember, what's important here is that within the ad, in this tiny little space on an iPhone, people understand clearly what they're clicking on. We want the name of the podcast to be very clear. We want the description to be very clear. We want the artwork to be eye-catching. We want people to click on this, and we want, after they click on it, when they hit play, to get exactly what they expected. Setting expectations in your podcast is important. Setting expectations in your ad copy and creative is incredibly important. Otherwise, you'll get a bunch of taps, and you won't get any subs. Okay? Very, very cool. So that's how you use Overcast. Super straightforward, not complicated. And again, we'll talk about the justification of CPA, cost per acquisition, cost per subscriber, in another video this week. Keep that fear in your mind. In the meantime, we're going to jump from Overcast and we're going to go have a look at Podcast Addict. That's up next.